Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Vivisection with me, Zane Simon, and my co-host, Connor Rebish. We are here for UFC Boise. Boise, it's just hard to say the word Boise out loud. That's a word I don't have to say very often, and now I just realize I'm like, well, we're here for UFC Boise.
Boise is one of those words that only exists to be a like an offhand joke in a comedy written by someone who has never been to the Midwest. Like,
yeah.
Oh, so-and-so characters from Milwaukee or
Yeah.
Boise. Or, yes, I realize occasionally Cincinnati gets this too.
Yes. Yeah. Cincinnati is one of those cities people come from. You can ascribe any characteristics you want to it because nobody has ever been there.
Yeah. yeah, pretty much.
It's like, oh, we want this to set in a city where we want this character to be from a city where nobody would ever go voluntarily, so they don't have to fact check anything.
Exactly. Something that definitely, like, people know it's real, but it's entirely forgettable. And what a perfect place for a fight card, Zane.
Yes.
Who could have asked for a better fight town
than Boise?
I mean, maybe that's the idea.
Go to retire. That's all I know about Idaho.
Maybe the idea is that during the promotional materials, the commentators can be talking about what a crazy fight town Boise is.
That's right.
And they're just making it all up, but nobody knows, so it's fine.
All right. Anyway, that being said, this fight card is actually good. If we have to get like 40 fight night cards a year or whatever the UFC feels like they need to make, then I want them all to look like this. This is a quality fight night card. It has every fight. We were just talking about this. Pretty much every single fight on this card has something to be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there are prospects that that are either new to the UFC or that we're still waiting to see how they develop and how they improve fight to fight. There are fights that can put fighters in title contention or near it on the card. There are, quality top of the division matchups. There are fights that are going to give fighters a chance to announce themselves as elite talents in the division.
Point is, it's a fight night card that has stories to it.
Exactly.
It's not meaningless violence. We have the return of Chad Mendes, Sage Northcutt continuing to try and prove himself. We have the return of Cat Zingano, if you want to look at it that way. We've got a #1 contenders fight possibly between Elkins and Volkanovski. We have stuff that means stuff. So
it's not just a whole laundry list of 3 and 2 guys fighting 2 and 3 guys.
Yeah. So I'm hyped. I think it's going to be fun.
So on that note, let's jump right in at the bottom and a women's strawweight bout, Jessica Aguilar versus Jodie Esquibel. We've already talked about this one, but we should recap it since it got rebooked.
God, I totally forgot this fight had even been made before.
Yeah, we talked. It was originally scheduled for Rivera Moraes card in the grudge of the 3 and 2 dudes fighting 2 and 3 dudes lineup.
I wonder how I managed to forget anything from that 3-week window. I'll remember it so fondly for the rest of my life, those 3 cards. This is a good fight. It's between basically 2 of the more experienced, sort of crafty, but certainly 2 of the least athletically gifted fighters at women's bantamweight. I mean, they're not the least because it's not a division that's very full on athletic talent as it is.
Yeah, but I always feel like Esquibel should be more athletic than she is. She looks like she's got the athletic gifts to put it all together, but it doesn't really show up that way.
Yeah, and clearly in Jessica Aguilar's last fight, like there was maybe a time where Aguilar offered a little more athleticism. I think she's like 37 or something now. And in her last fight against Courtney Casey, there was a clear disparity just in terms of how much horsepower she had.
Yeah, Aguilar's always been, she's a classic, like, hard work, try hard fighter who is overcoming athletic disparity with grit and toughness and just, that's always been who she is.
Yeah, and likewise against Claudia Gadelha, but I think she made the thing is Aguilar is the kind of fighter, like you said, she makes a good case out of herself in a lot of those fights where she's clearly outmatched, and it really just comes down to like decision making here. If Aguilar can I think if Aguilar can push a pace and force her wrestling game on Esquibel, then she can probably do her typical thing and grind out a win. But my question is, as she gets older, like, is she losing a little bit of her sharpness? Is she losing some of her fighting instinct? I don't know. The big deal in that Courtney Casey fight is that she didn't want to take Casey down because every time she did, she felt threatened. When it feels like a fighter as experienced as Aguilar should be confident enough to hang around in the guard of Courtney Casey.
Well, especially since Aguilar's always, like, the backbone of her fighting style has always been her grappling. So
she hit more takedowns against Gadelia than she did against Casey.
Yeah. It's always questionable. It's always worrisome when you see a fighter just not wanting to do the thing they do best.
Yeah. So that's my concern. I'm going to assume that Esquibel not being a great athlete like Casey and Gadelia is, Aguilar is going to be able to enforce her game a little more easily here. So I'm picking Aguilar by decision, but little warning signs there perhaps.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you down the line. The biggest thing is that I trust Aguilar to be busy, always busy enough to try to win. Like, if she's not getting horsed around in a fight, if she's not getting just punished for her lack of physicality, she's always working to make sure she's winning rounds. She's always throwing combinations, keeping her hands out, looking for takedowns, looking for grappling positions, just finding, doing the basics to win points. And Esquibel tends to just kind of have long stretches where she checks out, where she's just either like chasing someone and looking to box, but not really willing to let her hands go, or just getting pressed against the cage, or just kind of struggling to find any rhythm to the fight. So I think Esquibel is more powerful of the two of them, but she's never turned that power into being a great finisher. So
yeah.
I gotta trust Aguilar to win. Odds on the bout. Esquibel is the favorite, kind of surprisingly. Not really sure why she would be favored over.
Aguilar's coming off 2 losses. Esquibel hasn't fought for a while. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, but her last fight was just a completely one-sided loss to Carolina Kowalkiewicz, and then it was a split over Deanna Bennett.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not justifying it.
No.
I'm just guessing at what the causes may be.
Esquibel opened at plus 115, dropped down to minus 146, went up and down a little, but then flattened out at about 130 and has drifted out to minus 145. The odds actually taking a dip in the past day or so, down lower. And Aguilar opened at minus 155, adjusted up to plus 114, bounced up and down a little and evened out at plus 109, and they've jumped up to plus 120 in the last day or so. So yeah, like I said, I don't really know what's up there. And it's not like Esquibel's, she's 32. She's not way on the younger side of the sport where it's like, oh no, she's the fresh face.
I don't know. I don't understand it either. I mean, it's not like I think it's outrageous that I like Esquibel. She's a good fighter.
She's a fine fighter. She could win, but it should be basically just dead even.
Yeah. I suppose if you really wanted to read into Aguilar's last fight a lot, then these odds might make a little more sense. But
all right. Up next, a flyweight bout, Mark De La Rosa versus Elias Garcia. I don't know if it's Elias or Elias, whatever.
Yeah.
Heard too many commentators saying it both ways, and now I'm just not sure.
It depends on how he pronounces it, really.
Yes.
He could be American and say it either way, or he could, be from South America and say it probably more likely one way.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm interested to see how this fight looks at flyweight, because I feel like both of these guys are fighters who maybe haven't put together actual flyweight games yet. They both seem like they've been fighting regionally. Garcia, I guess, has fought at 125 a lot. De La Rosa has competed at 135 a lot. But I think a lot of it is just that their competition hasn't been very good. And so for tiny guys, they haven't really had to depend on being good at the kind of things that make a really good flyweight.
Mm-hmm.
So we see both of them kind of, well, like for Garcia, he tends to throw a lot of crafty strikes, likes to slip in little head kicks, be flashy, and then kind of very willing to play a guard game, very willing to just kind of let a scramble happen that he's not necessarily winning with that very, I mean, I know he's like Anthony Pettis' cousin, and it just kind of feels like very specific Pettis aspects have rubbed off on his game.
Mm.
And in ways that it's like, well, maybe it would be better if you were a little more like Sergio Pettis, who is just kind of structured and very like, no, I'm not going to let myself just be bullied all the time and make bad decisions and stick on my back.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Pettis' solution to getting bullied in his most recent fights last weekend was, according to him, to just be insanely aggressive all the time.
Yeah.
So that's basically the way that a guy like Garcia would have to fight to make this style effective at a high level, I think.
Yeah.
He's like super aggressive in every position.
But at the same time, De La Rosa, he has fast hands. He looks like he can throw combinations with a bit of speed, and he's been an aggressive sub hunter over his career, but he doesn't have any wrestling either. Mm-hmm. So you're probably going to get like Garcia throwing a lot more crazy strikes, trying to mix it up, trying to be crafty, maybe pulling guard even. And De La Rosa working a very meat and potatoes, like, oh, I'll go for a single leg or whatever to try to get this to the ground. And then I'm going to throw combinations with my hand stalking forward. I'll take Garcia. He looks like a better athlete. He's bigger. And De La Rosa seems like he's just not a very good athlete, and he's small even at flyweight. So I'm willing to get bank on that, but this could be a really like fun but sloppy fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm feeling Garcia as well. I too have some reservations about the Anthony Pettis-esque game he's playing going forward. Like even in this fight, I think there's a lot of he leaves a lot of openings in his the way he fights. Like Anthony Pettis for a long time now has had an aura and grew up in an era in the sport where like people were just more likely to give strikers a little bit of respect, assuming that both guys wanted to feel things out, and so he would have this pocket of range that he could work with to start setting things up and build his momentum. And like already in one of Garcia's fights, I think it was his most recent one against hold on. This is totally
David Williams.
Yes, David Williams. I know everyone knows
in a Contender Series bout in between that, but for some reason it didn't end up on his record because that's how he got signed, or not Contenders, but looking for a fight.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah. I've almost never watched that show.
No, I don't either because it's actually like 28 minutes of Dana White and Matt Serra broing it up, and then like 2 minutes of here's some highlights of a fight while we mostly just show reaction shots.
Yeah. So I can either like watch an amateur fight card where somebody probably has died recently, or watch two men who are desperately afraid of dying and feel it creeping up on them and just have to be young for another, I don't know.
Hey, Matt Serra defended his pasta weight title. Give the man a little give him some respect. He'll become pasta weight champion for nothing.
Much respect. So anyway, I watched Garcia's fight against David, whatever his name is. I've already forgot it. David Williams. And he gets dropped like instantly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this pointless waiting that he's doing where like he clearly has some strikes in his arsenal, but he wants to let Williams make mistakes. So he's leaving the window open for him to get caught, because it's not like he's putting himself in a perfect defensive position or doing things to create the openings he wants. He's just waiting.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff could be a problem against the likes of De La Rosa. But without the wrestling, I just think Garcia's too dynamic and dangerous, both on the ground and on the feet. So,
yep. Odds on this fight, Garcia is the favorite, opening at -130, adjusting up and down to -124, and falling out to -141. And De La Rosa opened at -110, adjusted up and down to -107, and has jumped up steadily to +116. Odds on that look just about right. Garcia, a slight favorite, but pretty close. Takes us to women's flyweight bout, Liz Carmouche versus Jennifer Maia. And, oh yeah, take it away.
Cool fight. Pretty solid. I like this one. Liz Carmouche, this is her, second fight at flyweight. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, she had that disappointing one against Alexis Davis.
Yeah. Quite disappointing. To be losing to Alexis Davis just in this year at all is not a great sign. And it's weird because I would like to have said, like I probably did say before that fight, that Liz Carmouche is slowly, quietly getting better at the game she wants to play, which is clearly like more of an all the way in, all the way out, kickboxing at long range, body lock, clinch, wrestling inside kind of thing. I feel like she added a little more consistency to that game. And then against Davis, it was just like I don't know if Alexis's reach really threw her off. The awkward sort of nonstop pawing that is Davis's boxing seemed to give her some pause. She was just uncomfortable.
The big thing I noticed too is that she, and this has just been true for her whole career, she doesn't pay any attention to her wrestling defense at all, or to her clinch defense at all. So she likes to jump in and out and have this sort of like peekaboo kind of weird boxing game she's modified. But it is just like you're jumping right into these situations where then you're not paying attention and you just give up underhooks, and then doesn't really fight to get them back or anything.
Yeah, she's not exactly a great like transitional fighter. I guess that's the idea. She can do one thing at a time, and she was getting better at doing those things at a time, I think. But I don't know. That Davis fight, it gives you some pause. Like, how difficult is it really to throw a wrench in Carmouche's? It's one of those things like after we broke down DC Miocic last week on heavy hands, Phil McKenzie said, what if heavyweight just sucks?
Yeah.
And that is sort of relevant. Like, what if Liz Carmouche, like at women's bantamweight, can just get away with more than it's possible to get away with at women's flyweight? And Jennifer Maia does look different in a lot of ways from your average women's bantamweight fighter. She's the former Invicta champion, of course, and a chute box fighter. Her style is very much like a tight guard, steadily marching forward. She's not like, she never gets crazy aggressive, like she's running after somebody, but she tends to be on the edge of or working her way into range all the time. And much like another chute box fighter like Tomas Almeida, she's always got that counter right hand ready, tends to put her punches together pretty well, and uses all of that to work her way into a fairly nice game in the clinch and everything. She's just consistent is I guess the basic read I have on Maia. The thing is I'm not sure that she's like quick enough on her feet to consistently track down somebody like Carmouche, but I don't think Carmouche is consistent enough to be doing damage in that kind of fight either. So I'm a little concerned we could be into something really slow here, but I'm going to fall back on Maia because I think consistent pace, inexorable forward movement, and experience are going to carry her here. So,
wait, so you're picking
Maia?
Maia, yeah. This is really tough for me because it's really hard to tell what Jennifer Maia does well in a fight. Like, you watch and she's composed. She looks like she should have this very classic boxing style of just like, she's got her hands up and she's ready to throw combinations and she looks like she's got the form. And then she just throws the same combination like 3 times over and just gets cracked. Yeah. And then she walks forward into the clinch and she just kind of grinds and holds people on the cage. She doesn't really have a wrestling game in there. There's no like, Jennifer Maia grappling highlights. She's got one arm bar and outside of the early stages of her career, ever since her move to Invicta, she has one rear naked choke, and That's it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly, she's just been really good at staying highly composed, whatever's going on in the fight, and keeping it, you know, after round, being willing to trade, being willing to just go back to throwing the same left straight right overhand combination over and over again and stay in the fight. And that might be enough to beat Liz Carmouche. Like I said, or like we say, Carmouche she's a better athlete. She looks like she should be the better boxer. She's definitely worked on being slick and trying to, you know, duck and cut angles and throw punches and all that. But she also just totally gets lost moving backwards on defense still. Just kind of gets surprised when anybody really wants to go after her and chase her down. And then she gets herself sucked into the clinch where she just gets inactive.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest reason to pick Maia here, is that if she's going to give Maia the clinch, Maia's just going to grind on that all fight. So
yeah, you sort of get the feeling that Maia is just a better, like, her style lends itself more to building momentum. Like, the main thing she does, you talked about, she you know, she throws the same combination over and over. She may not be creative, but she is the kind of fighter who doesn't tend to let you get away with the successes you have against her. She will stick in the fight exactly the same as she was before, and repay you if you're not careful. And it takes like a really calm, slick fighter to repeatedly find all of the openings in that kind of game. Like, honestly, against a fighter like Liz Carmouche, like, just consistent pace is probably pretty helpful. So
yeah, like I mean, watching Carmouche fights, it's always just been like, she'll like get some big slamming takedown, and you're like, why don't you just do that all fight? And then she'll just go back to like this outboxing game where you just like, what are you waiting for? And I shouldn't be. I said peekaboo earlier, which was totally wrong, but I meant like stick and move. I was just kidding.
I think like with a lot of MMA fighters, the problem is that they don't know the difference between like levels of power and exertion.
Yeah.
So like a lot of fighters who have early career concerns about gassing, their solution is to become almost utterly inactive, rather than like to realize, like, I can keep doing stuff, just don't try so hard.
Yeah.
And the stuff will still be effective. So it's like, we've seen that with like Amanda Nunes, we've seen it with Tyron Woodley, we see it, I think, the same idea with Liz Carmouche, where she did used to go whole hog and go nuts and gas in her very earliest fights, and now she's completely the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah. Odds on that fight, Carmouche is the favorite. Opened at -120 and pretty much stayed there up until a couple of days ago when she started falling down to -135. Maia opened at -120 as well, so they opened dead even and has slowly risen since then up to +110. I can see why Carmouche is the favorite. She's got, you know, more UFC opposition on her record. She's been around longer. She's the better athlete. She actually looks like she's good at different things that she does sometimes. But
talk about damning with faint praise.
I know. Anyway, featherweight bout next: Kurt Holobaugh versus Brownie Barcelos, or Hani Barcelos, I suppose.
Oh, I didn't listen to the commentary to see how they pronounce it.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. I'm just guessing.
This is using.
I gotta go with Holobaugh, in part because I just don't feel like I've seen enough of Barcelos. There's not enough tape out there on him other than like highlight footage and things like that. All the RFA stuff, you either watched it live or you're not going to track it down. But more than that, like watching what tape I can find on Barcelos, it becomes pretty obvious that he's very invested in being a single shot power striker. You know, like he's got good technique on his punches, on his strikes. He's was he invested? He wasn't part of like the Aldo camp, was he?
I don't know. He kind of looks like it.
He does. He's with Huas Vale Tudo, apparently.
Huas has some association with Nova União, doesn't he? Marco Ruas?
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Maybe not. Pedro Hizo does.
Yeah, no, he does. He's with Hizo Ruas Vale Tudo. The
Okay.
Pedro
So
Hizo.
he has that Brazilian Muay Thai look to his style.
Yeah, which is very invested in single power shots and like because this isn't like late stage Jose Aldo we're talking about here, where he's like become a much more educated combination power boxer.
Yeah, well, yeah, not that Aldo ever became a particularly smooth combination puncher anyway. When he was combination punching, he was punching.
Yeah. But it's very much, it's the well-schooled, well-formed power leg kicks, power crosses, and a power jab, and just whatever I'm throwing, I'm going to throw it with a lot of power behind it and push you off and try to bully you that way. And I really like what I've seen out of Holobaugh lately on the flip side of that, because Holobaugh does have power too, but he seems like he's added a lot of nuance to his kickboxing game. Like the guy who just kind of absolutely tore through Matt Bassett and pieced him up really easily. He did it with a lot of feints and a lot of short punches and a lot of light work, where he'd just be putting together little combinations and then sneak in a big power shot right behind it.
Goes like the stuff we're talking about. He doesn't have to try so hard. He just is finding his range and getting the counterpuncher to react to him.
And he has a good command of the pocket. He knows how to step forward, step in, and throw combinations, get out of the way of something, and then stay in front of somebody without jumping way 10 feet out and having to reset and restart his whole offensive game. He pieced up JZ Cavalcante that same way regionally. His biggest failing has always been that he's a really mediocre wrestler, and if you're a good wrestler, that's there to be taken advantage of. He just can't hang with a complex chain wrestling game, and he tends to make bad decisions grappling on the ground when he gets caught up in a wrestling game. But Barcelos doesn't really wrestle at all. He's pretty much devoted to being a single shot power kickboxer. Holobaugh's never been knocked out. He's only really been submitted or have had very close decision losses. And I feel like he's in the right spot to just kind of pick Barcelos apart, to land more shots, to be busier, to have a better command of range and timing and distance. And he can match Barcelos pretty well for power. So I got to take Holobaugh here.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I do quite like what I see out of Hany Barcelos.
Yeah, I do too.
Like I'm curious to know what happens if he manages to pressure Holobaugh.
Yeah, that is a good thing. That is a good thought. I don't think, like, that's the thing though. Is I don't think Barcelos is, because he's only throwing single power shots and he's trying to just kind of wait for his right moments. I don't see enough consistent pressure in his game to think he could just kind of.
Yeah, I don't think his game is really designed for it. But I'm also imagining like. Holobaugh throws his first jab of the fight, and Barcelos immediately slips, counters, hits him with a big shot, or even just cuffs him and puts him on the reactive for a moment, and then just kind of gets on him. He can put his punches together. Like, he doesn't really throw combinations that well, as you said, but he does play with his rhythm quite a bit when he has the other person like shelled up. He looks like a very dangerous finisher when he has somebody hurt. And I don't know, like a lot of Holobaugh's success, like in the Bassett fight, was due to him pressuring. He's very good at keeping like methodical pressure on his opponent. Using that jab, using the feints to draw out reactions and defend from like a safe distance. Whereas I don't know how good that control of distance is going to be if movement is changed, if he's suddenly put on the back foot or whatever.
He's pretty experienced though at this point in his career. Like he's been through 21 fights. He's 17-4, and those 4 losses: Andre Harrison, Magomedov, Frodo Kaspalayev. I'm not gonna try to say Magomed Rasul. Frodo Kaspalayev, Pat Healy, and then the one to really think about, Steven Seiler, which
Yeah, Siler's weird, but you think of Pat Healy and Khazbulayev, and you do kind of think of like pressure, and like it's not like Khazbulayev.
Steven Siler, like that was kind of during Steven Siler's good run where people didn't really understand what kind of fighter he was early in the UFC. Yeah. And he would just kind of go have this super clingy wrestle grappling game just all over people. And he won, he beat Kurt Holobaugh and Mike Brown and Joey Gambino and Cole Miller. And like he had a whole good run of form there. And then everybody was kind of like, oh, wait, you're just trying to come out and grapple me.
I could hit you on the shin.
Everybody just tore him apart.
Yeah, but I mean, so I think those there are some relevant names among those losses, but there's also the very relevant difference between the likes of Pat Healy and Fedor Khazbulayev that they are very good grapplers and wrestlers.
Yeah, that's my point. And
Honey Barcelos is not
just kind of a big physical blanketing force.
So Barcelos is going to have to show something really new if pressure alone is going to be the solution, because it does seem that pressure plus grappling has been Holobaugh's problem in the past. So I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go with Holobaugh by decision. I think it'll be fun though. Like Barcelos doesn't seem like the type to lie down when Holobaugh starts to gain momentum. So I think we'll be in for
Holobaugh's whole fighting style is built around him coming forward and throwing, putting lots of shots together, putting lots of combinations together. His style reminds me a lot of like Jeremy Stevens, honestly. Like the new Jeremy Stevens who actually jabs and leg kicks and remembers to do little things now behind his power shots, not just sit
even
there
in the sense that like Holobaugh has this confidence. Like Bissett, he cracked him with some good shots in their fight, and it's like when Jeremy Stevens gets hit now, it's like he's aware, his eyes are on you, he's focusing on how you're reacting, so it doesn't phase him for a second when he gets hit.
Not like he used to, where he used to get clipped by something and he would just kind of stop for a second and
he's expecting to probably get hit, and he sees the shot coming before it connects anyway. So it's like, why should I react? I'm just going to keep fighting.
So Holobaugh comes in at, he opened at minus 215, adjusted up and down to minus 184, and it stayed pretty even out there at minus 192. Barcelos opened at plus 165, adjusted up and down to plus 152, and has risen up a little up since then, up to plus 158. So, that seems right.
Fine by
me. Just a reasonable favorite, but not a big one. Up next, Justin Scoggins versus Said Nurmagomedov.
Gosh, I hate this one. I really like them. Like, it's a very interesting matchup, obviously.
Yeah, it's a cool fight.
But I don't know how to predict Justin Scoggins fights. Is the main issue.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even 100% sure I have a read on what Justin Scoggins' problem is. Like, in the big picture sense, his issue is that he tends to do really well and then get a little tired and then get submitted. But it's not like he's like a flyweight Anthony Johnson. Like, a lot of times he seems comfortable and composed at the time he gets submitted. It's like,
honestly,
I don't know.
Kind of partially, I think it's just maybe like a bit of a physical thing.
Yeah.
Of just his build. Because he's kind of like, he's tall. He's a tall flyweight with short arms and a long neck. And so he gets into these positions that might be like comfortable gym positions with people who are going to let him fight through, or, whatever. We're going to work stuff. And because he's, clearly a very good dominating wrestler and all that, but he just kind of gets caught. And then suddenly, like, somebody gets an arm around his neck and it's a huge amount of trouble. And he's kind of just got a long, skinny neck. He's not one of those dudes whose head is built right on their shoulders and it's just unchokeable.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, like, from an approach perspective, like things that he can actually help. Although, how amazing would it be if Justin Scoggins came in with a super thick neck, like we're apparently going to see out of Alan Joban soon. That's his new move.
Yeah.
Is to build his neck up. I would love to see Justin Scoggins with like an overeem.
Yeah, just like
that would be amazing. That would probably fix all of his problems, to be honest. But in terms of strategy, like, I get the sense that Scoggins has a game that I really like. I think if you pick like just an average amalgam of a fighter who's just like an amalgamation of average level fighting skills with some experience, and you give him Justin Scoggins, he is going to have such a varied and tricky game that he's going to take them apart before they realize what's happening. Because he can do everything really well. He's a dangerous submission grappler. He's got a great top game, very good back takes as well.
Really strong wrestler.
Yeah, he's an exceptional wrestler, and you say that like he's actually like quite strong and effective in the clinch and the tie-ups and on the mat, but also he has the timing for really nice shots, which also suggests that he's a very good striker, which he is. He's one of the better technical strikers in this division. But I feel like he's not in there against just like average run-of-the-mill fighters. He's in there against like experienced opponents who tend to be a little more specialized than maybe Scoggins himself is. And he has never really seemed to know how to like turn off certain aspects of his game or pare them down or adjust them to the opponent he's fighting. So it's like, I don't know. That's what I can come up with is he's always trying to do everything.
Yeah. And
typically that means he's trying to grapple against the likes of Uluka Sasaki and Pedro Munoz, like John Moraga, like to get guillotined by John Moraga. That's the one guy you don't want to put yourself in guillotine position against. It's his best submission. So yeah, he tends to get caught by submission grapplers' best moves because he doesn't like account for where the danger zones are in this matchup.
Yeah.
And that's a problem I don't know if he's going to fix. And in a lot of ways, like Said Nurmagomedov is like him, like of a similar kind of style, except like he reminds me more of like Zabit Magomedsharipov in that he clearly likes to show off. Like Scoggins is settling down, I think, into a more workmanlike sort of game.
Yeah.
Based more on like good tech, like the defense he showed against
Munoz.
Was that? Was he showing really good striking defense? Yeah, he was against Munoz. Likewise against Borg, like just pulling his head off line, creating space, countering with beautiful long straight shots. That's the kind of stuff that I don't think Said Nurmagomedov has invested hardly any time in because he's really out there trying to show off the spin kicks at range, the spinning elbows.
God, he loves that Carlos Condit like loop over the shoulder head kick.
Yes, yeah. So it's like he's got a lot of tricks, whereas I think Scoggins has more of a reliable game. I think I like Scoggins. But yeah, I just don't trust him.
The big thing is in Scoggins' favor is that Nurmagomedov is no kind of submission grappler.
Yeah,
like he will try submissions and he'll throw them up, but he's got like 2 on his entire record.
Yeah,
it's just not something that he's terribly successful at.
So I say he's kind of like Scoggins himself. Like he'll go from these weird striking range. He'll hit a really nice, beautiful takedown, but he's not like a super threat on the ground. It's like he just wants to keep the fight moving. And yeah, like Scoggins has been doing that for longer.
Yeah, I'm partially I want to pick Said just because he's electric. You watch him fight. Like I don't know if what was his fight? It was Dagayev, I want to say. If you watched that one.
Dudayev.
You watched that one against Dudayev? Like, that is an insane fight. Yeah. It is just, it's like 15 minutes of just pure scramble-filled fury of Said Nurmagomedov spamming these over-the-shoulder kicks and, like, jump knees and whatever the hell else he can, and then, getting taken down and immediately going for like, a sweep or a submission and then throwing as many strikes as he can off his back or whatever. And it's fun as hell to watch. And I do wonder, like he hasn't made the investments in like defense and, some of the other like super clean
filling space
of his striking.
Yeah.
But I also wonder if he's just not a better, more natural striker than Scoggins, as just like a pure sort of kinetic talent, sort of like Zabit is with other fighters he's faced, where you're just like, maybe you still get hit by some stuff you shouldn't be hit by, and then you're still just gonna like unleash some weird ass combo that nobody sees coming. And is going to do a lot more than what they can do to you.
It's sort of like fighting the way punchers fight. You know,
Yeah.
like you don't have to have a lot of respect for it's like very offensively focused without a lot of techniques to fill the spaces between, but it's like you just utter confidence in your ability to land something really unusual and unexpected over and over again. So it's like in a lot of Saeed's fights, like his opponent ends up respecting him, like that Anthony Pettis aura I was talking about before, and that's what Scoggins doesn't have. So like,
yeah,
I don't know.
I want to pick Saeed for that. My worry is that if he does get sucked into a wrestling game, like I know he can scramble with Scoggins for a while, but will he get tired? Because like that was the thing with that what's his name fight, the one I just remembered, Dudaev fight, is that he started looking pretty fucking tired in that fight.
Like it's a beat too. I mean, again, like fighting like a puncher.
Fight, but that's the thing that flyweights can do is like the best ones, they can, you know, that's how Scoggins beat Ray Borg. It's just by staying with him for full 15 minutes and scrambling every time there's a scramble, just beating him on the scramble and not getting exhausted by it. So there's a chance that if Saeed gives him those kind of openings, that Scoggins can just stay on top of him. I think if this stays a range kickboxing battle, Saeed's more likely to land something that hurts Scoggins and makes Scoggins want to wrestle him than Scoggins is to hurt Saeed and scare him off of his game.
But I would say as the fight goes on, it becomes more likely that Scoggins lands those shots. I think, like again, like Scoggins, to my mind, all he has to do is like realize concretely that he needs to fill the space between Saeed's weird shots. He needs to be in there poking and prodding and measuring and giving Saeed things to react to, and just looking like being very busy while still picking his own moments to actually commit to a strike.
Yeah,
and if he does that, then yeah.
Because it's his debut, and because Scoggins has never been knocked out, and because he's a more cardio composed fighter, if not an actual game plan composed fighter.
Yeah,
I will pick Justin Scoggins here, but I do it against my own gut pick. It's not like Saeed Nurmagomedov is less experienced than Justin Scoggins. They both started fighting at the same time, so they've been doing this just as long as one another.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that Scoggins has been in there against better competition.
Yeah, definitely. But even still.
But Nurmagomedov has that, again, the Zabit feel where it's like he's going to go in there against good opponents and just not give a fuck.
Yep.
So
I have that serious feeling here.
I'm psyched for this fight. Scoggins
opened at plus 125, adjusted up and down to plus 137, and is currently at plus 130. It looks like it's heading down a bit right now. And Nurmagomedov opened at minus 165, adjusted up and down to minus 161, and has dipped down as low as minus 167 and is rising back up to minus 158. So a lot of people excited for Nurmagomedov's debut. I could easily see him lighting Scoggins up early and being the first knockout loss on Scoggins' career. Or just turning this into some weird, like, one-sided beating that you absolutely would not have expected. But I also feel like without a submission threat, Scoggins, we've seen him be so much more composed.
Agreed.
All right, that brings us to a featherweight bout: Darren Elkins versus Alexander Volkanovski. And
now that we've got the co-main event out of the way, onto the people's main event.
The people's main event, and fuck yeah, this is a tough fight to call.
It's an excellent fight. It is easily the best fight on the card.
And I am going against my desire here. And I'm going to pick Elkins.
Ooh.
Like, I want to see Volkanovski keep this run going. I love Darren Elkins, but I also, like, I know where the ceiling on Darren Elkins lies, and I know, like, I know I will always get fun fights out of Darren Elkins no matter what happens to him. Like, I don't worry about Darren Elkins' career. I'd love to see him get a title shot as like this sort of like the high point of a career that's been spent as what should have just been a funky wrestle grinder, but he's had a ton of, durability and lasting fight ability in the UFC. I'd love to see that happen. But I feel like a loss would be a lot more halting for Volkanovski's progress than it would be for Elkins, Like, I know,
even though
Elkins is going to be the same fighter no matter what.
Yeah.
I don't yet know what happens if Volkanovski gets knocked out or submitted or taken down a serious notch and then has to come. I know he has been knocked out once early in his career, but, I worry about that. But the thing is, really, honestly, it's just that Volkanovski, he's a big puncher. He's a great technical wrestler who has legitimately good, strong follow through and control on his techniques. A very good ground and pound fighter, but he's not a good finisher.
Mm-hmm.
His output isn't high enough. He throws one punch at a time, and he uses his power shots. It's very much the Michel Prazeres conundrum, where Prazeres has also been a classically poor finisher in the UFC, and I love his game top to bottom because everything is a part of every other thing. His big punches set up his clinch entry and takedown entries. His takedowns set up his ground and pound, and it just all is a functioning cycle. But what we saw, but not being a great finisher, that means he's going to have to fight Darren Elkins for every minute of this fight.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really know how great a chain wrestler he is against other really good wrestlers.
You don't know how great a chain wrestler anyone is until they fought Darren Elkins.
Exactly. Like, Darren Elkins gave Dennis Bermudez, they beat Dennis Bermudez.
Mm-hmm.
And he did a lot of it because Bermudez doesn't pay that much attention to his defensive wrestling. And he just let Elkins in on him like, oh, well, I'll be able to fight this guy off. It's not a big deal. And he couldn't. And Volkanovski has some of those same problems. He will let him, like Shane Young took him down a couple of times. As he moves forward, he will let people get takedowns with the idea, well, I can get back up. I know I'm good enough. I know how to wrestle. I know how to do these I know how to fight this off from a defensive position after I've already been taken down. So that's not a big deal. Against Darren Elkins, that might be a huge deal.
Right. And I don't even think that's as big an issue. Like, not to take away some of Elkins' shine. That's the last thing I want to do.
No.
But the comeback against Mirsad Bektic was less of a comeback upon review than it seemed in the moment, because like Elkins was very clearly working his way into the wrestling portions of that fight.
Yeah.
He got really badly beat up in the first round, but after that, he had mostly mitigated it and was tying Bektic up and doing more work and consistently getting himself into positions. I'm more concerned with Ken Volkanovski. Like, he might give up takedowns, but Elkins isn't a fantastic takedown artist. It's really the issue of, like, can he fight his kind of fight without wrestling? Like, the issue against Elkins is frequently that people who like to wrestle fight Elkins, and then they start wrestling him, and they do pretty well, and then inexorably, by the end of the fight, he is in control, and they're suddenly fighting Darren. Like, that's the OG game that you pointed out when Elkins fought Chaz Skelly. It's like, if your game consists of aggressive wrestling, then Darren Elkins is going to teach you a thing or two.
And so the other part of this of why I'm concerned is Volkanovski's fight against Mizuto Hirota. Mm-hmm. Now, I can't remember if it was a young fight that he was like sick for. I don't know that.
Yeah.
The Hirota fight, maybe he had some problem too, but then at the point that you start, if you start claiming multiple problems heading into multiple fights, then I don't really care or trust it. But by the third round of that fight, which was a tough, scrambly, back and forth fight that he was dominating a lot of, Volkanovski was fucking exhausted. And he fought well, and he fought through it, and he landed big shots, but he also got pushed around by Hirota in the clinch a lot and backed up and just had to really dig and ride out the end of that fight. You can't afford to be that against Darren Elkins. And we know this. We all know that if you get tired at any point in the fight, he will just ride you. And he will make life hell on you. So I want to see Volkanovski win this fight. It'd be a big feather in his cap. He could stop Elkins. Elkins has taken a shit ton of unnecessary damage in his career, and it will catch up with him. I mean, I think it already has caught up with him in ways that will never go away. But until I see it, and Volkanovski doesn't, like I say, he doesn't put his punches together often enough to be a great finisher consistently, especially at this level, then I'm going to bet on Elkins to ride through a really rough first round and slowly take over.
Yeah. I think I have a hard time. I just have a hard time imagining Volkanovski falling apart the way Bektic did.
Yeah, no, I don't think he'll. I don't think he'll fall apart the way Bektic did. But he's also not quite the physical force that Bektic is. Like he's as strong, but he's not as fast and powerful and able to catch.
One of the things I really like about, like, you have made all very, very good points. These are all things I have considered, and this is a very difficult fight to call. Just to spoil it, I'm still leaning slightly towards Volkanovski. So that's what I'm going to do now is basically make a soft case for Volkanovski. A thing that I really like about him is that he's a smart fighter.
He's a very smart fighter.
I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand, because he is a fairly aggressive, come forward kind of a banger. Like he doesn't shy away from dust ups. So people don't realize that, like, he puts his techniques together really intelligently. And I think, like, I look at something like that Mizuta Hirota fight, like, I thought that was actually a great performance from Mizuta Hirota in a fight that he was losing from the opening bell. I thought he did a great job of finding ways and moments to get back into that fight. And I still think it looks like a smart performance from Volkanovski, who, like, he realized as the fight was going on, he wasn't going to get Hirota out of there, and began to just dominate him with the wrestling and slowed the pace down a little bit. I thought he handled it pretty well, given all the resistance he was receiving. And it's hard for me to imagine Volkanovski getting to a point like the second round of the Bektic fight, because Elkins isn't much of a finishing threat either.
No, he's definitely probably not gonna finish.
Yeah, he goes for a lot of submissions. Yeah, I don't know if this is still true, but in the Bektic fight, I think the commentary team pointed out that he has the most submission attempts in featherweight history in the UFC, but that's kind of a bad thing, right? Because, like,
and up to the Michael Johnson fight, it would have been the most submission attempts without a submission finished.
Exactly, right? So, like, he's not known as a submission artist. He goes for a lot of things, and it's part of his game. Like, it changes positions. It allows him to work in advance, which is the real goal, I think. But I have a hard time seeing Volkanovski ending up in a situation where he's on the ground with Elkins. It's the middle of the fight. He's getting tired, and then he comes out in the third round and insists on tying up with Elkins. Now, maybe he will, because maybe that's what he did against Hirota. And I can read that as he's being smart, but maybe that's just, as it is for a lot of fighters, his comfort zone is to tie up. And that was Bektic's problem, is that he couldn't, like, he was clearly winning the striking exchanges, but he wasn't comfortable there like he was in the tie-ups. So he threw himself into danger because it felt safer.
Well, but also it's worth noting, I mean, too, like, there's no real way to not tie up with Darren Elkins, because he will just run after you until he connects some part of your body with some part of your body.
I mean, I don't think Volkanovski is going to shy away from clinching at any point, but I have a hard time. Like, he strikes me as a fighter who's intelligent enough to know how to manage those exchanges. Like, we're tied up. Okay, I get him against the fence. Okay, I break. I don't continue to willingly wrestle with Elkins. I don't know. I trust those aspects of Volkanovski's game. I also trust his fluidity on the feet over Bektic's. Bektic landed some hellacious,
kind of wooden.
Yeah, and Bektic landed some hellacious shots on Elkins, but you could tell he wasn't comfortable working at that range, because he's got this real tense
Yeah.
this tense vibe to his style. Volkanovski is mostly a one and done striker, but the way he chains his single strikes together, he doesn't like hit you with you know what I mean? That moment, like the entirety of the Ngannou Lewis fight, where Ngannou was just like, okay, the next strike is coming any moment now. Volkanovski doesn't do that. He hits you with something, it creates a different opening. He attacks that opening. He makes decisions very well. So I think Volkanovski is going to do it, but this is the main event of this card. It is absolutely the best fight on the card, and I think Elkins has a fantastic shot, so I can't wait to see it.
Volkanovski opened at -160, dropped down to -287, and is out at -343.
Nah, doesn't make any sense to me.
Doesn't make any sense. Elkins opened at +120, adjusted up and down to about +215 or so, and is up to +268. I mean, like, I like Volkanovski a lot. I love his composure. I love everything about his game. But like his level of competition, he had a ton of knockouts going up the Australian regional scene. But if you've watched a lot of the Australian regional scene, you'll know that that doesn't mean a lot.
Yeah.
And then in the UFC, it's Yusuke Kasuya, Mizuto Hirota, Shane Young, and Jeremy Kennedy. Like, that's his UFC fights.
Which I think is a very good way to bring along a promising fighter like Volkanovski. They've done a great job of not throwing him in too deep too early. But this is the deep water here. This is Darren Elkins.
This is Elkins is on a 6-fight win streak where, you know, he's beat Mirsad Bektic, beat Dennis Bermudez, beat Michael Johnson, beat Chaz Skelly,
his resume is outstanding.
He's beat Hatsu Hioki. That's a bigger win than anything that is on Volkanovski's career, you know? Like, that's just goes, there's a level here that we don't know what we're gonna get from Volkanovski in this fight. On the same time, at the same time, Elkins has lost to Hakran Diaz, who's kind of like a worse version of Volkanovski. It's like Volkanovski without any of the danger zones.
Or like Volkanovski could probably mimic Jeremy Stephens fairly well.
Jeremy Stephens just stood and cracked him with a few right hands and scared Elkins off. The difference then is that Elkins has become a much better boxer since moving to Team Alpha Male. Yeah. And he's, like we saw in the Bermudez fight and in the Johnson fight, he's way better at sneaking these little counter hooks and uppercuts into the middle of exchanges, where he's still getting teed off on. He's still a complete defensive liability, but suddenly he's sneaking in this power hook or this power uppercut right to his opponent's jaw that just shocks them totally.
Or his very awkward but surprisingly effective high kicks.
Yeah.
His weird ass striking has always fascinated me because it works a lot more.
He's developed a much craftier game that way than it used to be, as the guy who would just put everything out at you until something touched you and then cling on to whatever that was.
Yeah.
But all right, bantamweight bout next: Eddie Wineland versus Alejandro Perez. Go.
Oh gosh. I don't know, man. How long has it been since Eddie Wineland fought? It was that John Dodson fight.
Yeah. He had a fight with John Dodson where you just could look at it from the outside and be like, wow, Dodson's way faster than you, and he's just going to school you for 15 minutes, and that's all that happened.
That is what happened. Yeah. I guess you could say, like, looking at Wineland's recent record, the big problem is that his athleticism is probably declining. He has beaten guys who are not John Dodson, who are not, like, extremely quick. Alejandro Perez is not that kind of athlete, but he does have a similar-ish style to Dodson. He likes to fight from long range. He likes to do very little.
He loves to back up and throw counter hooks. That's his entire game. Just like, gonna throw these hooks with my back against the fence.
Yep. And if you take your foot off the gas or if you start slow, he will fill that space with low kicks.
Yeah.
It's quite effective. It's very frustrating. Sometimes frustrating to watch, but it's quite effective. And I don't like Eddie Wineland has never had a lot of variety to his game. He used to wrestle a little bit every now and then, I think. But now it's really just the boxing. And I don't know. I think that boxing is looking less and less like diverse and flavorful as it used to. It's like it feels like a lot of just waiting for counter right hands.
Yeah, there was the problem for Wineland has been, this is one of those things that Joe Rogan used to harp on about, and I hate that he harped on about it because it wasn't really a functional critique for how Wineland's career progressed.
Yeah.
But he was always like, nobody would ever teach anybody to box like Eddie Wineland. His chin's up and his hands are down and yada, yada, yada. It's like, yeah, but he stuffs all his takedowns with his hands down. And he's actually got really high energy footwork and upper body movement that means that he doesn't get hit clean that much.
Yeah.
Like, he was always he always used defense that was actually functional for MMA rather than just having your hands. I mean, his chin being down would have been helpful, but he used to have an amazing chin, so that didn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that he's not 20 anymore. He's 34, and a style built on high energy movement and a really quick reflexes is going to fail you badly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to give Joe too much credit for that critique because literally a chimpanzee could point out that holding your hands away from your chin is not, it's not like the dummies intro way to fighting. But yeah, now that he has age, now that his reflexes have slowed, that he's like, I don't know. The speed is not there. I felt like he was not pulling the trigger quite as much. He did against Signs and Mizugaki, but like again, I think the athleticism, like not getting the range he wants as consistently as he did against those guys, is going to be an issue where he's not going to let his right hand go. And there's just not enough variety between to set up and create the openings he wants. Like Perez is a little predictable. Like it's certainly possible that
predictable. I mean, if he's one of those dudes that like I get the feeling he's going to be a classic case too, where nobody really figured out who the hell this guy was or what he was doing for a couple of years now.
Yeah, he's like under the radar.
And he's just been winning because of that. But at some point, he's going to get it to a level where people are like, oh, wait, all he does is back up and throw counter hooks. And when you don't chase him, he throws low kicks.
Yeah.
Clearly, there must be a way to get through this.
Yeah, but even given that, like with the limitations of Wineland's game, I still, even if he does watch a lot of footage on Perez, I'm not sure that he can comfortably solve this style. So I'm going with Perez by a slow and possibly tedious decision.
Yeah, he might knock him out at some point, honestly.
Yeah.
The hands low, chin up, faded reflexes.
True.
At some point.
Yeah, Perez is I don't know, he's not a puncher certainly, but that Lopez shot makes you makes you wonder.
Got a little power. It's just that he's so predictable. It's really hard for him to get to it.
Yeah. Well, and he never sets his damn feet. So
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that this is one of those fights where like 4 years ago, Eddie Wineland wins this fight every day of the week. He had the speed advantage, he had the athleticism advantage, he had the power punching, the accuracy. He could have backed Perez up, picked him off with shots, and won. But he doesn't pull the trigger enough anymore at this point. And if he's going to have to come forward after Perez and fall right into his game with just a boxing game to solve it, yeah, I got to go with the younger guy who has the better chin and who is going to be throwing a little faster and harder at this point in his career potentially. So I'm going to take Perez too. Odds on this fight, Alejandro Perez is the favorite, opened at -215, adjusted down to -246, and has climbed back up ever since. Now up at -178. Wineland opened at +165, adjusted up and down got up as high as +195 or so, and has fallen consistently since then down to -140 or to +148 rather. So I like those odds. I mean, Wineland is, he's still a very good, accurate, powerful puncher, and like I said, I think 4 or 5 years ago I would pick him every day of the week to win this fight, but he deserves to be the underdog here, if not a huge one.
Works for me.
That brings us to our main card now. Women's bantamweight bout: Cat Zingano, Marion Reneau, and simply enough, I'm picking Reneau, and I'm not terribly happy about it. But Zingano gives so much up at this point in her career. I don't know. She's talked about like the brain injury thing, which is awful, and it's kind of troubling that she's still been fighting with it, because I don't know that that's the kind of thing that ever really gets fixed in any way.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't really have any structure to her game at all. She can uncork these fast, powerful strikes every now and then, but she basically just runs forward into the clinch, where she lets her opponent completely dictate the placement of the fight, whether she gets taken down or whether it stays standing and gets broken back out to range, or whether she gets held on the cage. And on the ground, she'll throw up submissions and be wild, but she'll also just play off her back, and there's just no structure to it. Reneau, her problems have always been an unwillingness to pull the trigger, an unwillingness to be as aggressive as her athleticism should let her. But she's a cleaner technical striker at this point. She's a very good jiu-jitsu practitioner, if not a better one, potentially, than Zingano even, although potentially equivalently. And if Zingano's just going to give her these huge openings over and over, I got to think at some point Reneau's going to take advantage of them well enough to win. So I'm picking Marion Reneau.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't know that Reneau has actually gotten better with her volume, like pulling the trigger, but it does feel a little bit like she has.
I think mostly she's become as a more experienced fighter, she's better at like knowing what's going on in the fight. So it's kind of the OSP thing, where it's like you can't really point to anything that OSP does better now than he did 6 years ago, but he's a better fighter now than he was 6 years ago, just because he's more experienced.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. Is like it just kind of feels like her feel for her fights has improved, where she's letting the same very small number of shots go, but she's letting them go like at the time that they need to be let go to land. It just feels like her game has become a little more decisive. She's kind of aged into it nicely. And Cat Zingano has had exactly the opposite experience. She has a young woman's fighting style, and the type of young woman's fighting style that you would hope even a young woman would grow out of before too long.
Yeah, I would honestly say I kind of feel like Zingano has gone backwards ever since that Rousey loss. Like, it just feels like she's a worse fighter than she was against Amanda Nunes and Miesha Tate when she was still wild and unstructured.
She is, yeah. So I think her technique has deteriorated, and she remains completely structureless.
Yeah.
So it's hard not to pick Reneau, even though Reneau is like, Zingano will probably be able to take her down. Zingano will probably be able to hit her or beat her up in the clinch if she really pushes for it. Zingano can probably put her in trouble on the ground at points, but Reneau is just a much more structured.
Yeah, there will be a couple of points in this fight, like every Cat Zingano fight, where Zingano comes perilously close to finishing. Like even in her fight against Ketlin Vieira, she like landed a big head kick that had Vieira hurt, and I think she like landed a couple other sharp shots. It was a split decision. Like, people thought, somebody thought Zingano had done enough to win it at certain points.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always that ability for her to just pull out something with speed and power and surprise, because the biggest thing Zingano has is that she is absolutely unrelenting in her desire to finish the fight at all times. Mm-hmm. Like, it will be 4:59 of round 3, and she'll be like, I wonder if I can throw a flying knee right now, And so there will be points where Reneau will get in trouble, but apart from those points, Reneau will probably be winning the fight.
And Reneau has successfully dealt with that kind of personality before.
Yep.
At the very least, like Jessica Andrade.
Yep.
She has shown in a couple of past fights that she's able to withstand a crazy aggression. She's not going to unsettle her. So
yeah,
got to go with Reneau.
All right. Odds on that fight.
She's 41.
She's what?
She's 41.
Yeah, I know.
I thought she was in her late 30s at the very most. My God.
Nope. Reneau is the favorite, opened at -140 and has basically stayed pretty settled. Got up as high as -110, is now down to -123. And Zingano opened at +100, got down as low as -114, and is at -102 right now. Close to even. I honestly think Reneau should be a little bit bigger of a favorite. It's just that her complete lack of dedication to any real offense in any given round is always going to make every fight of hers close.
Yeah.
That brings us to a featherweight bout, Myles Jury versus Chad Mendes.
All right. This one, I have to admit, my read on it has changed a little bit since I talked to Phil. Because automatically, I don't know. I look at this matchup and like Chad Mendes has been out for 2.5 years. After a steroid, a PED suspension,
face cream. It was face cream,
yeah, or knee cream, or wherever he had his horrible skin condition. Which is what I do, by the way. When I get acne, I just rub HGH all over my face.
Yeah, well, it's the cream and the clear. You can just have that right next to your jaw, next to your jar of oil of Olay, whatever, body wash, and
yeah, you gotta take care of yourself. Anyway, so Chad is back. Apparently, they have demanded he change his skincare regimen, and he has agreed for a chance to return to the octagon. And the read is like automatically, okay, this is like a soft comeback type of fight for Chad Mendes. It's not like a top guy. They're not throwing him right back into the mix, which that seems to make perfect sense. He's probably quite rusty, and who knows how he'll look, and who knows what influence. Like I imagine Chad Mendes could probably acquire better PEDs if he wanted to, but who knows what will have changed from before to now. It's hard to say. But I'm kind of concerned about Myles Jury now as an opponent. Like he doesn't light the world on fire. He doesn't get you excited the way that he did during his younger days. But I think it's because much like Rafael Sunsao, a lot of his opponents do tend to kind of learn the lessons he's trying to teach them quickly into the fight.
Yeah.
And Jury's a very good counterpuncher.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, that's the biggest thing that's come out of his game lately.
Yeah.
Like, he just made Rick Glenn look terrible. That fight was not close in any way.
Yeah, and that was the one I most recently rewatched and was like kind of blown away actually by how good Jury's counterpunching was.
Yeah.
Did a great job of changing stances and angles and keeping his head off the center line while putting in often 2 or 3 punches at a time. And Glenn is not Chad Mendes. Glenn
is one of the worst athletes in that division.
And just stylistically, like he doesn't have the speed or all the techniques to keep his head moving. He tends to come in, exactly where your target is. So it's much easier to keep your technique in order and look really slick when your target is just predictably moving in a straight line at you. But even so, like the people who have made Myles Jury look bad are not like Chad Mendes. They're not like methodical but relatively slow-paced, aggressive counterpunchers with little short arms. And they're not mostly wrestlers either. So, I still have a lot of faith in Mendes because I think he is a next-level athlete. I think he has a lot more power than Myles Jury. And hopefully, if things have continued in any sense, if he has stayed in his training, then he was, at the time he was suspended, becoming a really, really still in the process of becoming a really skilled and varied type of kickboxer as well. And he has the wrestling, which even if people who haven't been even if the people who have been beating Jury are not wrestlers, Jury has not fought a wrestler on the level of Chad Mendes either. And Mendes is one of the best wrestlers in the sport. So I'm going to stick with Mendes because I think he's going to be able to put some pressure on Jury and work his wrestling in such a way that Jury is going to not pull the trigger as much as the fight goes on. But if Mendes comes out and is just like I don't know, like he needs to really mind his P's and Q's and his tendency to throw single counters at a time. If Jury can time one of those and come back with 2 or 3 and do that over and over, then yeah, there's a serious window for Jury to win this fight.
Yeah, I mean, it is concerning for Mendes to see like the way he got knocked out against Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, I'm really hoping the time off has helped the chin issues more than anything.
Which was, I mean, because that was really very much Mendes stepping in, looking to throw a combination, having his chin hanging out there, and just eating a quick counter combo. And if Jury can do that repeatedly, he's got a big chance. It is really hard. I think the thing for me is it's really hard to shake the memory of how shit awful Myles Jury looked in his fight with Donald Cerrone.
Or the memory of how fucking awesome Chad Mendes looked 3 years ago. But it was 3 years ago. That's the thing.
Yeah. Like, and the Donald Cerrone fight was 3 years ago too.
Right, exactly.
Things have changed in that time. I'm gonna pick Myles Jury.
Oh my god, you animal.
Mostly, like, he's never been knocked out. So it's gonna be like there's a chance that whatever happens, it's gonna be a rough fight. A rough back and forth fight. We've now seen Mendes knocked out a couple times. Jury looked like a really good counterpuncher in his last fight, albeit against a much slower opponent. And then the other thing is that the Team Alpha Male wrestling game, it's not a wrestling game of like dominant wrestling control.
That is true.
It is a wrestling game where you take somebody down, you hunt for a submission, you let them back up, you land shots while they're getting up, and then you repeat and you go back to the wrestling and all that. Like, it's a game about resetting and keeping a cycle of pressure and a cycle of aggression going rather than keeping constant pressure and like breaking somebody with heavy top control. And so maybe he can submit Myles Jury. Jury certainly got submitted by Charles Oliveira, and that happened pretty quickly. But Oliveira is also kind of an insanely threatening, quick submission threat if you put yourself in the wrong position.
And how many submissions does Mendes even have? He's got a couple, I know, but he's got 2.
He's got 2, and they are old.
Yep.
So if this is going to be a kickboxing bout, and Mendes is going to be coming forward and pressuring, looking to counter, looking to throw combos, I'm going to trust Jury's chin more. That's, I think, about where I am.
You're a shit-eating wild man, but
I know.
You make a good case.
Why is your camera unfocusing so much?
Sorry, is it because I'm sitting off center?
It must be.
All right. Just trying to relax over here, Zane.
I know. Maybe the camera's just trying to relax with you. It's like, okay, yeah, just open things up, soften this a little.
Yeah.
All
that's
right.
That's what I'll admit to, rather than admitting to rubbing Vaseline all over my webcam.
That's right. Getting that youthful glow.
Yeah, for that 80s high school student look.
Yeah. All right. Jury opened at plus 170, adjusted up and down to plus 180, and has fallen steadily down to plus 139. Mendes opened at minus 230, adjusted up and down to minus 236, and has risen steadily up to minus 168. I like those odds getting closer and closer to even. It is a fight I would have picked Mendes every day in 3 or 4 years ago, but that was 3 or 4 years, and we haven't seen Mendes for a while. I'm not picking him here. That brings us to welterweight bout Randy Brown versus Niko Price. And honestly, Niko Price isn't very good. And the ways in which he is good aren't repeatable necessarily. Like, they're just sort of happenstances to his game. He's got really long arms and big hands, and that means that there's always power at the end of his punches. And then he is a crafty, aggressive grappler that can surprise people there.
Mm-hmm.
And that leaves openings against Randy Brown, who carries his chin high and is not himself a great technical grappler. But Price isn't really a great wrestler, and Brown is hard to take down against the fence. And then Brown is a much better clinch striker, and unlike most of Price's opponents, Brown has a range advantage, and Price kind of totally shut down against Vicente Luque. Brown also shut down against Bilal Muhammad, but that was against a pretty decisive, well thought out leg kicking game to just blow apart a weakness in Brown's game. And Brown has a ton of weaknesses in his game. That's every time he seems like he's fixed something else pop up. Like, oh wow, this is so completely patchwork.
Mm-hmm.
But Price, it's really just like he's losing right up until he finds a way to win the fight, or he's fighting George Sullivan and he wins that fight. So I'm picking Brown. I think if Price can, if Brown takes him down, he puts himself in position to get swept or submitted. And if Price can get Brown down, then there's a clear opportunity for submissions. But I like Brown's kickboxing game a lot better. I don't think Price is a consistent enough wrestler. And even if he does get it to the ground, I don't think Price is a consistent enough high-level grappling threat for me to just trust that pulls out every time he needs it. So,
yeah, I don't like Randy Brown's kickboxing a lot better is the problem.
No, I don't like it a lot better. No.
It's better, but he has that tall guy, the tall, long problem.
Yeah.
In MMA that Neil Magny also suffers from. Like in a lot of divisions, it's not a problem because MMA fighters are not good at dealing with reach, but it's an issue where because he's at long range, all of his movements are big. It's he feels like he has to jump around and do a lot of work to maintain that distance. Whereas if you look at really good long boxers, for example, they tend to
Adesanya.
Yeah. Yeah, and where he'll move plenty, but he knows how to settle his feet and just take really small little movements because he knows you're already on the end of his arms. He doesn't have to go running around. And so Brown, he also doesn't have the jab to establish that distance, much like Neil Magny. And so Niko, I don't have any faith in Niko Price to have a pressuring game plan that solves that, but I do wonder if he can't at some moment during the fight just decide to start going forward and land some shots and change the momentum dramatically. And the problem
he does have a tendency to just run forward with a power combo.
And it works a shocking amount of the time.
It does.
So, and Brown's fights are never, I would like Randy Brown to be better than he is. He feels like he has a lot of potential still, but none of his fights are ever that satisfying. It's always he has to run into some serious adversity. He's never just fully dominates an opponent, it feels like, or I don't know, does everything in his power to finish them succinctly. It's always a battle.
Shockingly, Brown and Price are the same age and have been fighting for pretty much the same amount of time.
There you go. So yeah, I'm gonna agree with you and go with Randy Brown. I like the takedown defense against the fence. I like his clinch skills. I think Price is going to end up in that range, and Brown is going to start finding ways to work on him. I just think Brown has more answers in more places, basically. But Niko Price might
always
have
a chance that Price lands some huge long punch that he is really, doesn't look like it should hurt and just crumples opponents.
Absolutely.
Or jumps on some weird submission or something and gets some to a good position in a scramble like he did against Brandon Thatch and George Sullivan. And
there are plenty of Price's recent victories that I would not have, and most of them I'm pretty sure that I did not predict. So I'm not going to count him out. He's a weird fighter who, as you said, it doesn't look that good, but he keeps doing impressive things. So and Randy Brown for whatever reason looks better, but somehow manages to do fewer impressive things.
Yeah.
So sticking with Brown, but Price is in it, I think.
Brown opened at plus 105, adjusted down to minus 111, and has been falling slowly out now at minus 129. Price opened at minus 145, adjusted up to minus 107, has been rising up ever since to plus 104. I like those odds at about dead even with Brown as a slight favorite. That makes sense.
Yep, fine by me.
Featherweight bout next, Dennis Bermudez, Rick Glenn. Your boy Ricky G.
My boy Rick, and he's going to strike at just the right time in Dennis Bermudez's career to notch a good win.
He might, yeah.
Yeah, it's still not an easy fight to call. Like, the thing is,
Glenn is probably, well, they've got a couple of really like questionable people they pick up because the UFC's like, they got that Jay Cuccinello guy. So maybe Glenn's not the worst athlete in that division anymore, but he's like bottom 5.
He's definitely not. He's also, I think listen, okay, Zane, as much as you say this about my boy Rick Glenn, that he's the least athletic, whatever, he's certainly not the worst.
No, he's definitely not the worst.
He's far from the worst, but I think says a great deal about how good he actually is as a fighter.
Oh yeah,
he is not a good athlete.
Composed and shockingly tough.
Yeah, he's among the best, despite being athletically maybe the worst.
Yeah,
or close. So I think that says a lot about him and why I like him as a fighter. He's very game. He's quite skilled. He's just not fast or powerful or strong or anything.
Yeah.
And that is the issue, especially against a guy like Dennis Bermudez.
Who is fast and strong and powerful and not at all composed in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. It's almost like it's like a cruel trick of God that like somebody like Rick Glenn has an amazing chin and Dennis Bermudez doesn't have a chin. Like, it doesn't make any sense given their relative physical attributes. But yeah, Dennis Bermudez also looked a little flat against Andre Fili, a fight that I still thought he won on the night. But he didn't look that good. He was getting taken down quite a bit and wasn't getting his own takedowns in. And it was really just down to Fili not being a very good athlete himself. And Fili's athletic limitations tend to rear their heads in the form of like stamina problems and getting broken down over the course of the fight. And to Glenn's advantage, that is not an issue for him.
No,
he has definitely slowed down in fights before. Like Evan Dunham managed to outwork him.
Evan Dunham is the only dude because he has the exact same game as Rick Glenn,
but he's even better,
with a lot more experience.
Yeah,
Evan Dunham is the one dude who can be like, fine, you want to just go with a like, let's see which of us gets brutalized and can last the longest, because it's gonna be me.
Yeah, because that's Evan Dunham's whole thing. But other than that, like Glenn is usually the one who his game, the pressure of his game weighs on you more and more.
That Gavin Tucker fight is the picture. That is the plutonic ideal of a Rick Glenn fight.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, like the thing is, Dennis Bermudez is not going to fade like that. He never has. He's always been in incredibly good condition. He's always been in great shape and is a great athlete, as I said. But he's also not going to have the effect on Glenn that he had on Fili, I don't think. Glenn is still going to be there, is going to be happy to absorb damage, and is going to be dangerous with, like, he's going to put out more volume and be dangerous in more areas than Fili. Like, Bermudez gets into the clinch and can't take Glenn down, which is what happened against Fili numerous times. He's now in Glenn's clinch, where Glenn is really good. He's got great knees, great elbows, and can break when he puts you against the fence and do some great boxing in the pocket as well. And Glenn's wrestling is pretty solid. Like, he hasn't really been taken off of his feet and held down that I can think of in the UFC, has he? Who?
Well, I mean, Dunham got him down quite a lot and beat him up from top position quite a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, his wrestling is actually pretty bad. It's just that
I think it's all right. He's not a great athlete is the problem.
Like, terrible. I mean, it's the thing we talk about with Terrion Ware too.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know, on that fight he had against who's the surprisingly streaking bantamweight?
Cody Stamann.
Yeah, Cody Stamann. And it's like he was getting taken off his feet by these blast double legs and all that. And you watch Terrion Ware's fights regionally, and you're like, he's not that bad a wrestler. What's going on? It's like, yeah, he cannot get his hips back fast enough to stuff a shot against somebody who's that much more athletic than him.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Glenn has some of that.
I guess that's fair. It really just comes down to like the kind of drive that elite athletes have that being a pretty decent technical wrestler just can't account for. Yeah, that's the thing is like, I guess that's Bermudez. Sucks though, you know, like he's at some point Bermudez has got to hit that ending point, and it's certainly a fight in which like Glenn's going to be there more than Feely. He's going to have a better chance than a lot of opponents of testing that Bermudez chin throughout the fight.
Yep.
But Bermudez is probably going to hit some shots. Yeah.
That's the thing is that Bermudez, you can talk about him having a bad chin, but that's mostly just because he gets hurt in fights. He's only been knocked out by Jeremy Stevens and Chen Sung Zhang.
True. Bermudez does not get the respect he deserves as like he always shows up, and whether he gets hurt or not, like he does not stop fighting. He is a fighter's fighter. Yeah. I'm going with Bermudez. I would much love my guy Glenn to win, but
I am too. I mean, because the thing with Bermudez, he's predictable. He throws, he comes in at the same speed every time, and that's kind of I think that's a lot of why his wrestling stopped working, especially in that Feely fight, where it's just like he's entering with punches or a takedown, and it's coming in the straight line. It's coming at the same speed, and it's always going to look more or less the same. He's it's kind of like if Josh Emmett were a worse boxer, that would be Dennis Bermudez.
Yeah.
And but he's busy. Like he's constantly busy and will constantly come after you. And if you're a lesser athlete to the extent that Glenn is, and you can't you can't stop the shot quick enough, and Bermudez doesn't get very tired. He tends to be in great shape. He tends to not fade badly in fights, especially not in a fight where he's kind of being able to control it. I don't feel like Glenn is going to find the avenue to get back in this himself, not being a great power puncher, not having the ability to just turn a fight on a dime. And
and you point out he's only been knocked out twice. But also, I think it's worth to note that, like, throughout his career, finishing him has been the only way to beat Dennis Bermudez.
Yeah.
He didn't lose a decision until Darren Elkins, and then again against Andre Feely, which again, a fight I thought he won. Like, most of the time, if you're going to allow him to be in the fight for 15 minutes, he's going to win.
Yeah. And the Elkins fight, like I say, that's very clearly Dennis Bermudez doesn't pay a lot of attention to his defense or any at all. He's coming forward and he's coming with a set plan. Like, I'm going to throw these punches and I'm going to go for this takedown, and that's just what's going to happen, and that's fine. And I need to know what's coming back at me. And so for Elkins, it was just like, well, if you're just going to let me tie up with you, then I'll suck you down into this trap and make you work. Fine.
Yeah.
But Glenn doesn't. I mean, Glenn has the ability to take punishment, and if you get tired punishing him, then he will come back and he will make life miserable for you. But he doesn't have the same ability to, like, take over technically to make you tired.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pick Bermudez too. I won't be surprised if Glenn finds a way to win it. I won't be surprised if he can catch Bermudez with something that normally wouldn't have hurt him and now does, or if he can just suddenly kind of, put a grind on Bermudez and Bermudez starts fading more than normal, because Bermudez is exactly the kind of fighter who, even though he's only 31, is putting a ton of fight miles on his body. Like, every fight he has is a war. It's always an athletic contest that is just really, really wearing. So I won't be surprised to see those wheels just totally fall off. But
for all that I did give him the edge against Feely, like, Feely is not really that far above, if at all, Glenn in terms of athletic ability or whatever. And Feely's definitely a lot faster than Rick Glenn. Sure. Okay. Yeah. He has his own limitations compared to the elite, I should say. And that was the first kind of fight where, like, you could say the athleticism is fading for Bermudez. He was getting, it wasn't clear, and normally, like, you had to finish him because otherwise he would clearly outwork you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't obvious who had won the fight if you weren't paying very close attention, like he couldn't pull the trigger that well. He was getting tagged and stuck on the end of Feely's reach a lot more. And again, he wasn't finishing his shots.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
This could be if Bermudez loses this fight. I think it's a very clear corner turn for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Bermudez opened at minus 170, dropped down to minus 260, and is currently at minus 250. That line hasn't moved much at all since it opened. Glenn opened at plus 130, jumped up to plus 201, is currently at plus 204. That brings us to our co-main event, Sage Northcutt versus Zach Ottow. And this is me, right? I think so.
I don't know. We're back to this again, but again.
Yes, okay, finally, whatever. Northcutt should win this fight, but the problems are going to be the same. Like, it's kind of a question of like how far above Thibault Gouti is Zach Ottow. And physically, in terms of power and athleticism, he's quite a bit above Thibault Gouti. But so is Michael Quinones. It's in terms of game planning, how much is he above Thibault Gouti? And in terms of game planning, Zach Ottow is not at all. Ottow is not, he tends to be a back foot counterpuncher. And when he goes forward, he loses, he gets off balance. He can't string combinations together. He can do like a 1-2, and then that's it. If he has to do more than that, he starts to he has to rush himself. He has to rush and push out ahead of his feet and get off balance. And he's strong, but he's not a great wrestler. He's a decent grappler, but he can get reversed. He's willing to get into compromised positions. A lot of his regional fights where he got submissions would be like him jumping on a dominant position, giving it up, and then getting it back.
Yeah.
And so if Zach Ottow, especially if he's going to be on his back foot looking to counterpunch, he just can't match Sage Northcutt for speed. Like, Northcutt will just freeze him up from range. We've seen that with other fighters, and I don't see enough in Ottow to think, oh, he's this great trigger-pulling power puncher at any given moment. He got froze up by Li Jinglong. He got froze up by Sergio Moraes. People who are just willing to stay on the front foot and, throw their own shots at him. He doesn't have a good set answer for that. So Northcutt, you give him that kind of space and you give him that kind of respect, and he'll fill it and make you look bad doing it. So, yeah, I got to pick Northcutt.
Yeah. Man, part of me really wants to pick Ottow here. Cause
Ottow could absolutely knock him out. Northcutt, his defense is deer in the headlights stuff.
He ate some nasty punches from Thibault Gouti.
Yeah.
Like, he got cracked with right hands in that fight. And yeah, I mean, the funny thing, Northcutt now has gone for the Alan Jouban method. If you've seen his latest pictures on Twitter, his neck is apparent. He's like, he looks ridiculous now. But so maybe, durability certainly wasn't a problem. He took some ferocious, clean shots from Gouti, but he didn't react well at all.
No.
And put himself in really bad position to take those shots and couldn't adjust. Like, he doesn't move his head between his shots. He doesn't. I mean,
when he's going backwards, especially, he tends to stick his chin out as he steps back. Like, he keeps his chin actually pretty tight when he's stalking forward and looking for his own stuff, so that when he gets countered, it's not that big a deal. But when he's going backwards, he tends to be like hands out, chin up. Let me try to find a way out. And
he puts himself in really bad positions and he doesn't seem to be that good at adjusting. Like, he's all about like. It seems like going forward, my guess is Northcutt's game is going to be all about surprising you with his athletic ability right out the gate, and then you're going to have opportunities to figure him out after that. And I can really see Ottow doing that. Like he is an experienced fighter. He's not like he's not the greatest game planner in the world is the problem.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is that like the thing with Goody is that for all of his severe athletic limitations, he is a pressure combination boxer. Like that's what he wants to do. Is he stalks you down and he's looking to let go body head combinations. And had he been a better athlete, that was exactly the right thing to beat Sage Northcutt.
Yeah, and unless he's fighting Mike Pyle, Zach Ottow doesn't tend to go out like looking for the pressure. Then he
dropped Pyle. Finally, when he actually hurt Pyle, it was because Pyle was moving forward and he caught him with a huge counter shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can still see Ottow landing those kinds of shots. Like again, Northcutt was also getting countered by Goody because he's very fast and very explosive, but once you get his timing, you tend to kind of have his timing.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I guess Northcutt. I'm just gonna pick Sage. I think the athletic ability, he's probably going to land some good shots. And I think Ottow's instinct tends to be to protect himself and kind of shell up when he does get tagged. I don't think he's exactly the right style of fighter to come back and teach Northcutt a lesson after he almost invariably takes some big shots early.
Yeah. So. Ottow opened at plus 100, got up as high as plus 118, and has seen some movement late down to plus 110. Still a slight underdog. Northcutt opened at minus 140, evened out at minus 144, and has jumped up to minus 135 in the past day or so. There's no reason Northcutt couldn't get knocked out horribly. He does have a ton of terrible defensive habits and liabilities and discomfort, mostly tension and discomfort on defense. But I also still expect him to get better now that he's at a better camp, and when he has a severe athletic advantage and the right style matchup, he tends to just impose it. So
where's he at now? Is he at somewhere other than?
He's at Alpha Male.
Oh, still at Alpha Male. Okay.
Yeah, but he's not training with his dad in his dad's garage and learning jujitsu and karate only, and like Japanese jujitsu or something. I don't know.
Yeah, probably Japanese jiu-jitsu, or Sage Northcutt almost certainly has some kind of degree in ninjutsu.
Yeah,
he must.
In a different life, at a different level of athlete, Sage Northcutt was 100% on the Step Brothers train of karate in the garage.
Yeah, if only he were less absurdly athletic, he would absolutely be. Okay.
Dennis Bermudez, same level of enthusiasm too, Yeah,
absolutely. he has the enthusiasm that only a homeschooled person can have. That is true.
Northcutt is opened at minus 1. Oh, we already did the odds. Never mind. Main event.
All right.
Junior Dos Santos, Blagoy, Ivanov. Take it away.
Now, wouldn't it have been better if this was Darren Elkins versus Alexander Volkanovski?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. That is clearly a more exciting and interesting fight. But heavyweights. Boy. I hate this fight. I hate everything about it. Junior Dos Santos.
Do you hate it enough to pick Blagoy Ivanov?
Gosh, that is the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the question. Junior Dos Santos has not changed at all. And I was like, I watched his Ben Rothwell fight, and even then I was like, oh, there's some adjustments. And I think he was like thinking of the problems he'd been having. And Ben Rothwell was just like slow enough and not good enough at pressuring.
Yeah, you realize watching the Stipe Miocic fight and the Ben Rothwell fight, you're like, oh, wait, this is the same fight. Ben Rothwell just can't do any of the things Stipe Miocic can do.
Yeah, and I think like I look at that fight, and I think clearly you compare it to earlier JDS fights, and it's obvious he is thinking about not getting trapped against the cage. He's aware that it's a problem.
Yeah.
But Rothwell lets him fix the problem. And Stipe just didn't.
Yeah.
And melted Junior Dos Santos. And that's the second time he's been badly KO'd in a fairly recent memory.
It is most troubling to me about that Stipe Miocic loss that JDS was like, I was fighting the perfect fight up until I got knocked out.
God, yeah. And he did the same shit he did against Kane in the rematch. He fought Kane. Yeah. He had all these problems. And it's like, okay, some shit has to change. And then the rematch rolls around. And he's like, don't worry, guys. I've got it. This is for the rubber match rolls around. He's like, don't worry, guys. I got it figured out this time. And his ingenious addition to his game was elbows. He was going to throw up elbows in the clinch because that was going to stop Kane's clinch. And then against Stipe, he's like, I was fighting the perfect fight. And clearly what that meant was
low kick.
Now he was doing the same thing he'd always done, plus also low kicks. And it's like the fundamentals will never change.
Yeah.
He has never addressed his fundamental technique, and it will never change. And the older he gets and the more he gets beat up, the harder it will be to make those changes. So can Blagoy Ivanov?
How Ben Rothwell is Blagoy Ivanov?
Yes.
The question.
Yeah, and he might be worse than Ben Rothwell because he doesn't have reach.
Yeah.
So like Ben Rothwell being a big slow ass wouldn't work nearly as well if he didn't have weird like long limbs and a bizarre, difficult to time striking style. Ivanov is much more meat and potatoes.
And dancing, you know.
And the dancing. Yeah, and I don't think Ivanov even can dance. Yeah. I kind of think like I watch Ivanov's fight with Caio Alansar.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? JDS can probably win this.
Yeah.
Because like
that looks like an extra decrepit JDS with none of the offensive tools, and Ivanov is just chasing him around the cage.
Exactly. Because it's like, what if JDS lost faith in his jab and like stopped throwing any of his punches and still got trapped against the fence? And Ivanov didn't do a particularly good job of punishing him for that.
No.
And he's going to be
dealing punishing him for that. He's basically like, it's like Fedor's stand-up if it didn't have any of the things that made it good. Like if you just had the ability to surprise people with like the occasionally well-timed sort of like screw punch, screw hook sort of.
Yeah, like the surprisingly quick combos where like one weird punch comes, but then two more come right after it.
Yeah. Or
like the clinches that put you off balance and in position for the next shot. Yeah, it's like Fedor striking, but shitty. So I'm going to go with JDS because the problem for Ben Rothwell is that in following JDS around, yes, he was consistently able to corral him and trap him, and he did land some shots, but he also ate a shitload of jabs and a lot of body work. It's something that JDS has always done very well. It's hard for me to imagine Ivanov doing that for 5 rounds and not breaking down faster than Junior does.
Yeah, I mean, because you look like for every quick knockout win that Ivanov has, because he has some speed and he has and he like has timing on those punches. He also has decisions to Caio Alankar and Josh Copeland and a 3rd round submission against Smilino Rama, where it's just, going 3 rounds with Rich Hale, 15 minutes with Rich Hale, where it's just like the inability to produce any singularly meaningful offense that isn't just following your opponent around and occasionally landing one sneaky punch means that you are going to take, you're going to these ugly decisions. And none of those fighters is nearly even a 10th as good as Junior Dos Santos. So,
yeah, not at all.
Yeah, I'm going to take JDS too. I just can't pull the trigger on Ivanov, but there is a 35 to 40% chance that he ties up with JDS. He backs him to the cage and just lands one little sneaky hooker uppercut that turns his lights out, and that's the end of the fight. And it happens like in round 1, and that's it.
I really thought you said one little sneaky hooker uppercut.
Yeah, well.
Like, what the hell is that? What experiences have you had in your life saying that you have a...
No, it's that, like, the Daniel Hooker punches he's thrown.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Exactly. No, I know, yeah, like, there's a very good chance that JDS's chin is ruined now, and it's heavyweight anyway, and Ivanov just walks him down and is more confident and excited than ever because he's in the UFC now, and just knocks him out with the first punch he lands.
Yep.
That could happen.
Could happen. Dos Santos opened at -120, adjusted down to -165, and has stayed pretty even out at -176 now. Ivanov opened at -120, adjusted up to plus 146 or so, and is currently at plus 146. So I'm happy with that. JDS could be a slightly bigger advantage, but Ivanov has shown himself to be generally sneaky and winning enough to win a lot of heavyweight fights. So he has a chin on him, and if he can hang for 15 minutes with JDS, he's going to get chances to land single sneaky shots that could end this fight.
I'm with you.
All right, on that note, you can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush. That's BUSCH. You can find both of us over at BloodyElbow.com day to day. And give us a like on YouTube down there, thumbs up thing. If you're watching this on YouTube, and you should be, subscribe to our YouTube channel, MMANation.com, DOTCOM, all spelled out. That's where you'll find all the latest Bloody Elbow shows, videos, analysis, interviews, all that stuff we do week to week. We will be back next in 2 weeks. No, next week. We'll be back next week for UFC Fight Night Shogun versus Smith in Hamburg, Germany. That card taking place on a Sunday. We'll have the Vivisection. We'll have Care Don't Care. We'll have If I Did It. We'll have Heavy Hands. And I'll be back for the 6th round after this card. So stay tuned, everyone, and we will see you soon.